Ready to rock.
Now, you have somebody editing this, right?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, there's really not much to edit. It's
Right.
going to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's us.
Oh, it started.
yeah.
We already started.
Oh, no. Seriously.
Yeah.
We'll do
Here
it
we go.
live.
All right.
Here's a quote just for this episode. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others.
Well, dude, I was just thinking about this morning. That blows my mind. I was literally just thinking about this morning.
I'm here with a thoughtful man.
Wow.
Synchronicity, as Carl Jung would say.
Yeah.
The director of learning and development with a top contractor school, founder of Center for Victory, leader to a wonderful flock, a good man, a gracious guy, a friend of the Culture Matters podcast. And man, I'm so happy to have you back, Eric Guy.
Yeah.
And
so glad to be back.
This quote, it stuck out to me because I want to learn today about personality and personality resources and how you got started in that and where's the value in that for those that don't know about this concept. But before we go into that, I picked this quote because it stuck at me at this personality conversation. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. You were thinking about that this morning?
Yeah. Just like we all have those sides. We can either choose which side to utilize. I mean, growing up, I was the same person, same personality. But it caused me a lot of heartache and a lot of trials, and I got in a lot of trouble. I actually got a lot of trouble. And now that those same things, right? When you deal with that, when you deal with kind of the darkness and come into the light of those things, you use those things for good and not evil. But it wasn't just this morning, but it was, it's been for some reason lately, and I'm not sure why that is, and maybe just because we're doing so many things here, and
sure,
to help people, and because we all have that. We can go there. I can go to that dark side, and I think early on in my career that really scared me, and that's why I didn't. I think not noticing it made me not flourish. Like, and trying to push it down.
When did you start? When did that start shifting?
I met the young lady that I'm married to now, and she said, "You better get your act together if you want to date me." And I was like, "Well, this is right." I was probably pretty much at rock bottom there for me.
Wow,
I would say, and I met her, and then she's like, "No, I'm not going to date you." And I'm like, "Really?" And I went back and asked again. She's like, "No." I'm like, "Can you change this? Like, how do we go from a no to a yes?" And she really said that. And then,
wow.
Again, when we started dating, I remember her like it was yesterday. I mean, I was going to spring break with all my buddies down in Florida, and she said, "You screw up, we're done. Right? Get into trouble, get whatever, get in a fight, arrested, whatever." She's like, "We're done." Like that. It's just as simple as that. And I was like, "Okay." And I didn't know how to do it at that point in time. I just knew. I think for me, right before I met her, I just didn't want to be angry all the time. Like, I was just angry, and then it would come across. I didn't know how to be happy. Right? All I knew was darkness.
Wow.
Right? And it was familiar. And it was weird jumping out of that. And every once in a while it still is. Like, I mean, even like when I met you, when I met Brian, it's like, well, Jay's a pretty good guy. Well, do I trust him? Do I like you go through all that attachment stuff. I mean, you know that quite well too. But I mean, I really struggle with it. Like, why do people like me? And it's weird because I know how to tick people off to not like me and all those things and live in that darkness. And that was so familiar, but I was a slave to that, a slave to that darkness, and it just consumed me. And it's like, well, you bring out the light in that, and And again, still to this day, I mean, I turn to her. I mean, I'm not, it's not a codependent relationship. It's interdependent now because
Mm.
she relies on me for the same thing, and it's nice to be there. But you
Wow.
do have to know that. You do have to know that dark side because everybody has it.
What happens to people when they don't? Or what can happen when they don't explore it?
Well, I
When they
think
don't recognize or work,
bottom line, you just don't enjoy life. Simply, I think you just don't enjoy life to its fullest. You don't, you never learn to thrive. You're constantly in a state of, I would call it a state of dysregulation, stressed out all the time, and it reflects in all the areas that are important in life, in your finances, in your relationships, and in your work. When you choose to step into that light, Jay, I don't think life is. I mean, obviously, life is hard. We've had things that have been extremely difficult as a family to us. And then almost losing a business in when COVID happened because we were always face to face with people and hadn't transitioned. So, it's things like that. I'm not saying life's all sunshine and rainbows, but it's meant to be enjoyed. But I think we're also called to bring that out, like bring that out in ourselves and shed that light into others so that we can be a light into their dark side.
what was a core value that early on that stuck out, your wife at the time, girlfriend, that you admired about her?
Well, a couple things. One, the biggest one today that she would tell you if you asked her that is I trust her. 100%.
Like integrity?
Yeah. I mean, I trust her with everything. Right. I was having a chat with my daughter on the way in this morning, and we were talking about doing a surprise for my wife for her birthday, and I'm like, I don't know how to surprise her because like she sees everything. Like, there's no way that I don't have a credit card that she doesn't know about. I don't have like she knows everything because she takes care of it so much better than me, and that's a big thing coming from me because there aren't very many people that I trust that well, and that was one of the things that I struggled with,
Mm.
right, early on. And I was like, kind of like, yeah, and for her to say that, and say, hey, look, you like, we can have this relationship, but you got to step it up. I was like, okay. And I trusted that she meant it.
Yeah, what do you think she saw in you then?
Really, I think she saw a little bit of light. She saw a little flicker, and she'll probably tell you that. I was with her one day, and I had one of the things that I always did during college was there was a specific time every week that I would, we didn't have cell phones back then, so I would run back to my room in college. I lived in a fraternity house, so I'd run back to my room to call my grandmother.
Oh.
And then, I was told her I was doing that one day, and said that, she let the crack in the door open just a little bit, and then it kind of progressed from there. So it was like, and I trusted what she said. Like I did not, like I was literally on my best behavior that spring break. I mean, absolute best behavior. Didn't fight, didn't do anything. Those kinds of things, but just came back and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be with.
How have you seen in your tenure working with business owners, entrepreneurs, behavior influence or not personality?
Behavior influence?
Yeah, like stopping doing certain things or doing more of others. What have you seen? Like because this is going to what personality awareness and education is, what impact it can have. But
yeah, I think
because you stopped you stopped certain behaviors, it sounds like as a consequence of that.
Yeah, and
that
I think
trust,
it
that
was just a
faith.
shift on, like, I was still the same person. I still had those same attributes, same personality, but I just shifted it to be better, to do better.
Mm.
Um,
Your behavior's changed.
the behavior changed, but it had to, it definitely had to happen at a very, like, I had to bring out what was going on unconsciously to a conscious level. I mean, one of the things that I had done before, and it's funny that I do this now because I had no idea what I was doing back then. It's kind of like similar to your kind of lifelong study of culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, how am I going to be happy? Well, the important thing for me was relationships, and I never believed that relationships were easy. And so what I did, the first 3x5 note card I had, as I just wrote on it, relationships come easily and quickly. And I would just look at it every day, and I didn't believe it for the longest time. And even when I met her, like, you get into something that's really good, and then you start pushing it away. It's like, do I trust it? Oh, all those things. And we worked through some of those things. I think with her it was fairly easy. With others, not so much. That stuff still comes up every once in a while. But the behavior change, using it for good and not for bad, like the joke in the house, especially even with my kids, is sometimes I'm a little conflictual. Like, kind of induce conflict, right? And I don't think I'm doing it, right? So having awareness of that, okay, you're making people uncomfortable. The other thing, especially for leaders, right?
Yeah.
That I see a lot is that ability to be a great or have good communication skills, be a great communicator, but then don't use that muscle all the time and become a good listener. I think that is one thing that I've really had to teach myself, that I really try to teach other leaders, is just listen sometimes, right? Just because you know the answer, and that's worked for my kids too, like helping them figure it out so you can empower your employees, so they're not always coming to you as the leader, and even for your kids, so they're not always coming to you. They know you're there, but you're giving them the confidence that they have the ability to do it on their own. But that ability to listen, I think all really great leaders that I've seen have that ability to, even if they're not or haven't been great listeners, they learn to listen, and they know when to listen. And again, like, I don't do it 100% of the time perfectly, and I don't think I've seen anybody else do it 100% perfectly. But having the awareness that you need to stop and not always problem solve, but equip your people through that listening is one of the things that I see a lot.
When did you first come into contact with personality as a concept in business? Personality testing, personality.
Yeah, it's an interesting story and a great question. I did not. My passion in life was not to be working with businesses. I mean, literally all through my schooling, my graduate work, and all that, I had one business class. That was it.
Wow.
And really didn't pay attention a whole lot, because the guy that was running the business class was also running for office. So I figured the best way to get a better grade would be to help him out, and that's what I did. So I spent my time helping him campaign, and got a good grade. Really didn't do most of the work, didn't pay attention, but I got out on my own. I was just frustrated with, I was doing private practice, as a therapist, and just became utterly frustrated with insurance companies and things, like submitting all this. And part of that was my personality too, because it's like, why do I need to do this when I can just get the result? But it pushed me to look for something better, be more creative. And that's when I actually started my program, that I would go in and I would stay with people inside their homes for periods of days. Had great results with that. And I tell you that story because that's what led to the assessments, right? Those people typically were higher up in companies, because it was all private pay. They were typically higher up in companies, or the owners. and they saw the results, and then there was the push. I think it was probably after the third person just kept saying, "Hey, look, can you come do this in my company? Like, you did this with my kids, with my family, my marriage is so much better. My kids respect me again, but blah 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 blah, all that stuff, which is great stuff, right?" And we were getting people off gross amounts of medication too. And I was like, "Well, I just can't go in and guess, right? I can, but like,
Hmm.
there's nothing objective with that." And I'm pretty subjective myself. Again, that goes back to the awareness piece. Like, do I do this in and of myself, and kind of let my darkness and ego override this, or do I look for something more objective? And I did. I went and tested out several different types of assessments and things like that, and landed on the ones we have now, which I think are some of the best. And that's kind of where we landed on that. It's personality, it's motivation, it's seeing how that person sees the world, and then how they currently view themselves, which is huge. But it goes along with a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, and that's why again, going back to that quote, those different assessments are at different levels. A lot of companies start with a behavioral piece, which is good. I mean, people can wrap their head around that. It's for hiring, it's for motivating your employees, it's for working on conflict between two people. But then you go a little bit deeper. It's like, okay, what's motivating me? What drives me to do this job? Because we all have different drivers. And then going even deeper is really getting into what's going on unconsciously. Like, did I even know this about myself? What are the questions I need to be asking myself? What are my roles? What do I want my roles to be? And that really led to me jumping into businesses. And if you would have told me years and years ago that this is what I've been doing, but it's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's that I needed that expertise to be able to read those assessments and go deeper with those assessments than most people can.
You mentioned personality, motivation, how they see the world, how they see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say someone
Attributes.
how someone sees the world and how someone sees themselves. Have you found that often can be a conflict?
Yeah, and especially with it can be a conflict with their behavior and their motivation. Right? When you look at those things and it's like, well, they're not going in the right direction. Well, what direction should I be going in? I had a gentleman actually here yesterday, called me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm hearing all this stuff about this vision day. You've been to Vision Day."
Yeah, it's great.
He's like, "I hear all this stuff about this vision stuff." That's what he said. This vision stuff. How do I get hooked into that? What's the cost for coaching? I'm like, whoa. Let's just back up a little bit. Let's have you take the assessments first. Let's look into what's going on, and that directs us. I loved his enthusiasm, but we just had to bring it back to like, you can't just like jump in the deep end and you don't know how to swim. But I found these to be, some of the best that go along with the things that we talk about, because, from a psychotherapist standpoint, what I'm trying to do is get people to look into what's going on unconsciously, create some awareness around that, look at the stress in their life, good and bad. What emotion is coming from that, right? Is it fear? Is it fear-based? Is it love-based? And then work on the behavior change. Like, if somebody can have the same personalities that we do, Jay, but if they really don't care about themselves or care for others, that behavior is going to manifest itself in different ways. There's probably a lot of career criminals that are in jail that have our same personality bent. And knowing, going back to our discussion, knowing when and where to use those things in a healthy and constructive manner.
What are some big, from an entrepreneurs that are listening, some blind spots you often see as it relates to personality with entrepreneurs?
Sometimes going too fast, right? I always say slow down to speed up. I don't like to hear that I want everything done right now. Everything is not urgent, and that's not a good culture to to be in either. Where it's like, well, I don't know what's doing. Hair's on fire constantly. Um, Missing processes to scale, right? Because we're so busy doing things. And I would think the other thing is not slowing down long enough to provide expectations for people and to figure out, what it is that we want, what it is that we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, and giving people feedback. And a lot of entrepreneurs, if you've made it that far, like, and you're doing those things, I find sometimes the things that I don't need, other people really do need. They need to be shown appreciation, and they need to know that they're doing a good job, and they need to know specifically what they're doing a good job in. You need to take a break once in a while to notice them as a person. And I think that's what we try to do, is really help bring out the uniqueness in everybody, trying to get the right person in the right seat. But then, once you get them in, what do you do with them? Right? That's the biggest piece most companies are missing. And we can hire the right people for you, but if you don't treat them well, people will do a lot of things. They'll adapt and bend to a lot of situations if you treat them really well. If you had a good culture, right?
So you can hire someone, the right personality, but the company has its own. Well, the company has its own personality. That's the culture, the identity of the organization, and what your expertise is matching those.
Yeah, and I think when you don't know going back to the culture piece, if they don't fit the culture, they're still not a good fit. It doesn't matter if they check all the other boxes. I know a lot of our clients. Well, I've made the mistake. I mean, I'll be the first one to say it. I mean, I've hired a couple people in the past that, a slam dunk personality. They match the role. We've known that other people with this kind of behavior.
Like, my personality might not be the best in North Korea. And North Korea may not get the most from America,
right?
Unless they fled and went through all the trials. If they were just placed here and they were happy over there, right, they might not get the American dream. Yeah. They're still looking at the picture of their god, Kim Jong, whatever, in there, because there's a picture of him right in their office, in their home. Mm-hmm. So it's matching the two.
Yeah. And then reinforcing it. You just can't let it lay.
How have you seen, last question here on this, people misuse their personality awareness? Ugh. If you have a punch list of thou shalt not.
Oh, I hate, despise when people say, oh, that's just me, in a situation where they've shrugged their responsibility and their accountability. That's not okay. Or they, I've seen some leaders, and I say this at the end of all of our trainings. I'm like, use what you know now for good and not evil. Some people kind of get it in their heads that certain other profiles or personalities are somehow inferior to mine.
Oh, yeah. Wow. What else? What else are? Oh my. Yeah. So certain are inferior. Superiority complex, or
those are the two of the big ones. And I heard it, through my wife of another leader. She was talking to another leader of a company, and they were saying, well, the leader is using it this way. He always says,
could that be a sign of narcissistic personality disorder?
Could be, yeah.
I'm just, because if that's just me, the fault, I'm the victim, and then I would say it's a great way to see how people relate to these things, to see are they unwell or something.
Yeah.
That's just me, or better than others.
Those are the two big ones.
That's a huge red flag as a person in a position of authority.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure that's how Kim feels with his.
Oh, yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
If people really want to, go down this rabbit hole and explore these concepts, how can they get in touch with you and maybe learn about one of these
Sure.
tests?
Eric at centerforvictory.com, ERIC at Center for Victory, FOR, victory.com, and or just the website. I mean, we're on social media too. We have a good podcast that you've been on a couple times. Your best day yet,
Yeah.
which is always good. But yeah, reach out. If you're interested, we can send them out. You can do them. Really not a huge, really no cost to dip your toe in the water and figure some things out. And if it comes around to January next year and you're in town, come to Vision Day. Jay made it all the way from Florida, came up to Pittsburgh just for Vision Day.
Get your ass in the seat. Connect with Eric. Please, I would listen to this at least one more time. Explore the idea of personality. And follow, your Instagram? What's the Instagram?
Center for Victory.
Center for Victory. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks, brother.
Yep, thank you.
I will just stare
We didn't hit
awkwardly.
record.
Wait, really? Oh, stop.